Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to ODI Global. Welcome to this In Conversation event hosted jointly by ODI Global and the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, EBRD. Really grateful to have you all with us for this important conversation. It's an honor really to be joined by you, Hashim. Hashim Shawa is the chairman of the Bank of Palestine Group, and I think this is going to be a really timely and deeply significant conversation. We've exchanged now for a few years, around World Economic Forum. I've had the pleasure to get to know Hashim and what the Bank of Palestine does, which is why I wanted Hashim to come to ODI Global and, with EBRD share this incredible story that the Bank of Palestine is, and really think how this resilience it has demonstrated can be, further supported. I think Hashim's leadership comes, as you all know, at a moment of really profound crisis for Palestine. I think as the war continues in Gaza, and we witness this devastating, human and economic consequences of the conflict. What strikes me is really the resilience of Palestinian institutions, and the banking sector, is part of that. They've been tested like never before, but they are still there. The Bank of Palestine, under your leadership, continues to operate under incredible circumstances that would have deterred many others. It continues to provide essential services. It strives to safeguard economic stabilities for individuals and for businesses. So we wanted today's discussion to really offer an opportunity to reflect on how the bank is navigating the crisis, to say more about the challenges that it faces, and really understand your priorities, how to support recovery and long-term development in Palestine. But we'll also talk about innovation, technology, the international support. It's really critical in supporting a resilient future for the bank and for the Palestinians that use, the bank. I'll have a few questions for Hashim. I'll start for the first 30 minutes. It's really going to be between me and Hashim in conversation. Then I'll turn to all of you to join the conversation. I realize you probably are seeing just my back on that side. And then I will invite Francis Malish, the Managing Director and Head of Financial Institutions Business Group at EBRD, to and wrap up the conversation, share his concluding remarks. Again, thanks for co-hosting this event with us. And then we'll move next door for some kind of light refreshment to continue the conversation informally over there. But without further delay, Hashim, thank you so much for being here, for prioritizing coming to ODI Global tonight. I mean, as I said, the war in Gaza has created an unprecedented challenge across all sectors of Palestinian life. Can you share with us how the bank has continued to function under these incredible sort of extreme conditions? I mean, what does day-to-day resilience look like in practice?
First of all, Sarah, thank you, and thank you ODI Global, and to all our friends, EBRD, Francis, and many partners and friends in this room for being with us today and listening to sharing this, giving us the platform to share the story and have an open discussion. The more we can get some Q&A going, that would be great. But happy to be here to give you our side of the story of the resilient story as we face what is, and the war is still ravaging and going on. Bank of Palestine is a bank that is a mirror of the community, of the country, of the people, and it's profound privilege that myself and my colleagues are steering this bank. It's a huge responsibility, navigating the bank out of this what I call apocalyptic storm that we're in. It's on a personal level, as if I may just give some personal context here. Gaza is my hometown. It's where I was born and raised. It's where the bank was born and raised, established in 1960. And it's where it began its journey as a bank that was there to support the real economy, the agricultural sector mainly, and SMEs. It was a beautiful, flourishing place with orange groves from the south to the north, exporting citrus globally, and enterprises and business flourishing. And it's just heartbreaking to see what has unfolded these past couple of years. But this has been going on for over 75 years. This gradual attempt to basically erase anything called Palestine. I mean, in fact, we were in 1960 established, and in 1967 the bank was forced shut after the occupation of 1967, just because of the name of the bank. We committed no crime. We were just the fact that the bank was established with the name Bank of Palestine was enough, and I think that really also puts into context what we're up against here, okay, and how long this has been going on. But the resilience story starts there, right? Because we're still here. We were shut down in 1967. This is way before Oslo and the peace process and so on. I mean, this is a long time ago. We basically fought for the bank's life in the courts. Pursuing our path to justice and to get the bank restarted back then. And luckily, with the determination and the resilient spirit of the leadership at the time, of the bank at the time, and the commitment of both Israeli and Palestinian justice and legal professionals, pursued a court case, and basically between the bank and the State of Israel, until it got to the Supreme Court in Israel, and we were, by the Supreme Court, found not guilty for doing anything, just by having a name called the Bank of Palestine. And so the bank was licensed back then, after winning that court case, to reopen and restart. And today, the bank is the largest financial institution, representing almost 50% of the GDP, an engine of the real economy, the biggest lender, the biggest deposit taker, with over maybe 2,500 employees, and 1.5 million customers, and is a key player in the real economy and financing projects, small businesses, micro businesses, and is an ESG, what we call now ESG, but the bank was founded in 1960 just on the principles of good banking, values, community, giving, responsible banking, and the connection to the land and giving back to community was the principles and the values of this bank. So the resilience story is of the bank is just, it's in its DNA, it's in the DNA of our people, of the land, of our country, and every spectrum of Palestinian life, and the bank's journey, its closure, it's effectively it was closed down for over a decade, but then was able to, through this determination and resilience, to just get justice, and was able to restart, and here we are today, and that story has galvanized not only the trust and confidence of our people and our customers, because our customers and our people see the relationship the bank has with the community and the principles and values we uphold, but also has seen that we have adhered to the highest principles of regulatory policies. We have our deputy governor of the Palestine Monetary Authority here as well. We have colleagues from many banks from Palestine with us in this room. So we are just a representative of the bigger picture, right? But the fact that we have gained the trust and confidence of people, of investors, of shareholders, of depositors, of financial institutions globally. We are in the City of London. We have, the backing and support of a global corresponding banking relationship with all the leading banks of the world, who recognize Palestine and are determined to continue providing essential services to uphold. Banking is life. It's oxygen. It's the economy. It's what pays and supports day-to-day life in every aspect. So a bank, and the fact that it carries the name and has been through and battle tested since 1960 up to today, and has captured also the support of MDBs, of DFIs, multilateral, bilateral, EBRD being one of our dearest and nearest. It's been a hell of a journey, let's say.
I'm sure it has.
Yeah.
But as I say, trust has been a really important, determinant.
It's all about trust.
It's all about trust. It's the trust of the investors, but it's the trust of the
community.
Exactly. And in crises like the one is unfolding in Gaza, public trust in institutions is really precious, but it's also precarious. How has the bank balanced the need for financial stability with the imperative to serve communities under duress?
So, trust starts with the grassroots, right? Community respect and trust and service and reputation. At the end, a bank needs its depositors as step one, and so that is step one. But I think the fact that the principles of the bank of giving back to the community, how active we are with the community. Since the founding of the bank, it's allocated over 5% of its net profits back to community giving, whether it's in education, in health, and in humanitarian relief, and in youth empowerment, and women empowerment, and all so many different aspects of what we used to call CSR and now ESG. So that is core, and we're part of the Global Banking Alliance on values. We've been awarded Best Bank globally by FT Banker Award for financial inclusion, and using also innovative digital channels. So, look, the trust story it starts with the grassroots. It starts at the community level, the core value system of the bank, and then it transcends and goes from there. And I think we've also attracted like-minded the capital base of the bank, shareholder base of the bank. There's nothing more rewarding than standing in front of your shareholder general assembly and they ask you to do more for the community when you already do a hell of a lot beyond any bank that I know of in the world that gives more than 5% of its profits back to seriously studied community programs and developmental programs. And the latest being the Orphans Program, Noor. It's called Noor Fund, that we did with the leading NGO in Palestine, Ta'awan. And we're partnering with many donors to come into that fund, supporting the needs of, over 30,000 orphans as a result of this tragic war in Gaza that's decimated 90% of the infrastructure in Palestine, left 2.1 million people homeless, displaced, desperate, starving, and all these orphans. There is no, in human modern history, we don't know of such a orphan crisis of this scale in 18 months. So we put together a commitment. So you talk about trust. When you go out there and you announce establishing an orphans fund, and you're a bank, and you say we're going to support 30,000 orphans over 18 years, over their whole life. This is an 18-year commitment. $2 million a year that our CEO will write a check every year for. So that's a $36 million commitment. And that we have to go out there and raise $400 million over the next few years, right? And we've already raised a big chunk of that. But so when that message gets out there, that's how you just gain the hearts and minds and the trust of a lot of people, not just your customers, but like I said, the shareholders who you'd think would be just more concerned about their dividends and their profits. But actually, we have proven over the years that we're a high-yielding bank that averages a return on equity. If you take out those years of war and extreme, unprecedented situations, we average 12% return on equity, double-digit, and high dividend yields that we've been consistent giving back to our shareholders. So that's also an important message. We're not an NGO. We're not a charity. We're values and our North Star and our moral compass is fixed in exactly the right place. And we've been able to demonstrate that you can be totally committed to those values and principles, and be extremely profitable, innovative. We're probably one of the youngest also banks, we're the oldest bank, but the youngest bank in age group. We're the first bank to be gender balanced at even board level, which is unheard of. So not only sort of at mass staff, level and executive C-level, I think we're at almost 40%. We're getting there. We're not 50% yet, but we're getting very close to that. But at board level, to be 50% gender balanced, that tells you a lot. And when you have the chair lady of the Tech and Transformation Committee, a woman, you have the chair of our HR and Governance Committee, a woman, you have the chair of our ESG Committee, a woman, leading committees at the board level as well, and some of the most important committees about strategy, about policies. That tells you a lot. So we've been able to prove that you can gain the trust and confidence of your depositors, your shareholders, your stakeholders, and galvanize more partners into the story of resilience, because resilience needs fuel, right? And it doesn't grow on a tree without being watered and supported. So you're all part of the resilience story of the bank. It doesn't happen alone. So and trust is a major component of that. And I think what I can say is, like, it also, we translate that into dollar amounts. So, yeah, shareholders do like a return, right? It's, again, we're not a charity, so, but we've been able to prove we can give them returns and still give a very decent amount of our profits back to community. But we've been able to attract foreign investment from institutional investors globally, from whether it's in Japan, the Japanese International Cooperation Agency, to of course multilaterals, all the IFCs and EBRDs, etc. The Arab Fund, which is a multilateral of the GCC, all the way to bilaterals, whether it's the French Development Agency through Proparco, whether it's the German, whether it's the US DFC, which was an unprecedented, still there, and which was an unprecedented bipartisan support that needed congressional approval, 180 million facility during the war. So just to tell you, like before the war, up to the war, like let's say 15 years, up to a few days before the war, we attracted almost $500 million of investment to the bank in capital, in debt instruments, in risk-sharing instruments, supporting SMEs, trade finance. That's a lot, $500 million. But in just the 15 months of the war, we mobilized $360 million. That's in it on top of. That also tells you we have credibility and trust built over so many years that when the tough gets really going, you call on your friends and partners, and they step up, they double down, like EBRD and IFC and others. So that's a proof of trust, right?
Absolutely. But of this international support that you mentioned, without necessarily mentioning names, but more the typology, what kind of support has proven most useful to the resilience of the bank, and what do you still need?
Look, each deal, each transaction, each instrument, it all contributes to a positive story and a positive. It solidifies our foundations and strengthens the bank's foundations, and you put all these. We have our pitch deck. When we go around and you have all these accolades of this deal, this additional tier 1 capital from the Japanese, and this trade finance agreement with EBRD, and this equity deal with IFC, and this risk guarantee line from the DFC, and a contingency line from the, so we have all those trophies, right? And we put them in a presentation, and it totally, it's our first slide or second slide, because it's the one, it used to be further in the deck, but we decided, because we ended up in all meetings ripping that one out and starting with that. So we just decided, that tells the main story. The fact that you have done all of these transactions, and in each of these transactions, there's a huge amount of audit work, due diligence, you can imagine the technical work that has to be done on the investing partner coming into the bank and our team to get these deals done. And some of them have taken 3-4 years to do. Some have taken 3-4 months to do. We'd like to see more of the 3-4 months ones. Hint, hint to some of our colleagues and friends in the room. But you asked the question of how does it help? One helps the other, and funnily enough, there's some healthy kind of competition between these financial institutions. They seem to be encouraged when one does a deal. They say, okay, well, we should do one. We should, and I've seen some of our colleagues in other banks and the Palestine Monetary Authority. We have very open and healthy team spirit relationship amongst competing banks. But when it comes to these successes, we share, we collaborate, because we're sadly to say, but it's happening on the ground. And in the West Bank, there's an accelerated threat of things going down in the West Bank that maybe all eyes are on Gaza, and rightly so, because there's a famine right now, and so we need to end this war and rebuild lives and so on. But there is also an alarming situation in the West Bank, and so we're always trying to find opportunities with our friends and our regulator and the Palestinian Authority as a collective, to strengthen our ability to withstand the shocks. So we've had great initiatives by the PMA that, whether it's moratoriums or whether it's they've mobilized European Investment Bank money and funding to deploy lower cost SME lending at a reduced rate, and risk guarantee mechanisms, and they implemented, for example, accelerated. What the war makes you push through bureaucracy and cut tape, and that's we have this relationship with our regulator and the and partner banks and so on to push them to just cut the bureaucracy and take action, and they've been responsive. So they deployed the national payment system during the war. They deployed a number of initiatives that accelerated digital banking and made that a lot more effective, because in times of war you need to push through those initiatives.
What's your message to international financial institutions that want to be part of Palestine's future, but they're really wary of risks?
Look, Palestine is for the brave, right? So attracting investment and the risk profile and so on. The first conversations we always have with these institutions is the fact that there's no country rating. There's no, it's off the charts. I mean, the risks are, it's up there. But we've also been able to prove, historical track records and show that there is a healthy regulatory environment abiding by Basel III and all the, has been also, we're waiting for the MENA FATF to come and do their assessment. But in the interim, there's been assessments by the US Treasury and by the UK Treasury and other central banks that certified that the Palestinian banking system and the regulatory environment is solid, it's safe, it abides by all the right principles of AML, CTF, and all of that stuff, which is very important to we almost have to be more Catholic than the Pope, right? There's that saying. So we are, to onboard a client, the level of KYC and due diligence and checks and balances and screenings we do, and transaction trend monitoring and stuff is much more than probably what takes place in other countries. So risk profiling is something, risk management and risk mitigation is something we understand, and we've also mobilized a lot of risk mitigation mechanisms. Like one of them, like I said, the DFC. So we're one of the biggest lenders to SMEs, but a big chunk of that portfolio of loans to SMEs is guaranteed by some of these political risk insurance-backed programs. So we need more of those programs, and I think that will reduce the risk profile a little bit. And I think the other is comfort in numbers. So when more and more bilateral development agencies and multilateral agencies come in more numbers and do more deals and work with more banks, you have more diversification. You have this kind of, at the end of the day, these are state-backed institutions or member state, if it's a multilateral, and they have a say, right? And so if there is an issue as a result of a crippling measure by the occupation or by Israeli measures or whatever it is that is a problem or causing a risk incident, then the more we have bilateral and multilateral investment flowing into Palestine, recognizing that there is an important economic pillar, the banking system, and this is in the interest of having a healthy official financial system that is well regulated. I think you can all say is better than having a non-regulated, dark, off-grid, suitcases of cash system, right? And I think no one can argue with that. So this is the positive story we keep telling, and it's getting traction. And these transactions, when they go to the boards of these multilaterals, and then the member state countries, I guess their representatives have to vote, it becomes a discussion in respective countries, and I think this is the issue of the banking issues, the risks. There's the issue of crippling amount of cash now in the Palestinian banking sector due to just technical restrictions that the Israelis have placed on shipping cash back to, because we're a predominantly shekel dependent economy due to the Paris peace agreement and protocols. We buy most of our goods from Israel. We sell pretty much everything we produce back to Israel. A lot of the labor is in Israel. It's Palestinian labor. So shekel is a major currency. And we have this insane situation where we have way too much physical paper cash idle in vaults of banks, losing, we estimate, opportunity of that cash being deployed and worked, stripping our economy of maybe 30 to 40% of its GDP. It's a huge crippling factor. The World Bank did a study of the cost of the occupation and restrictions placed by the Israelis on the Palestinian economy, and you can't get your head around it. It's a huge number. It's 40% of GDP. I mean, so yeah, there's a lot of risks, but I think we need more friends to say, look, these are technical issues. Like, for example, still today, before the war, okay, and up to there wasn't 3G or 4G in Gaza. People couldn't use mobile smart banking or do anything mobile. Can you believe it? I mean, there isn't anywhere on the planet where you don't have mobile internet anymore. These are restrictions placed that cripple the economy, and the West Bank only got mobile 3G, and we're on 3G, which is archaic. Only just a few years ago. Water is restricted, movement of goods are restricted, so this strips, despite all that, yes, we're resilient, we push, we're innovative, we're a young, highly educated economy and population, determined and so on, but there's only so much that resilience can deliver.
I want to open up to the audience, but just one last question. If we look ahead, and hopefully, there's the war, the unfolding genocide, as even Tom Fletcher, the emergency relief coordinator, was saying to the UN yesterday, comes to a halt. What are the bank's priorities to contribute to the economic recovery of Palestine? What are the initiatives or the sectors that are central to your vision?
So we're in deep crisis mode, right? Luckily we've provisioned these last couple of years. We've covered pretty much most of the wipeout of Gaza. I mean, it's literally a wipeout situation. But and so we had our first in history of the bank booked a financial loss for 2024 of $30 million. But we're just actually today announcing, and I think we disclosed our first quarter of 2025, we're up 20 million. And that's after taking pretty much all the provisions for the last 23 and 24, the 2 years, the worst years in our history. So we're back, we're solid, we have huge amount of liquidity. We planned for the worst, and we have this policy: you plan for the very worst and you hope for the best, but we always plan for the worst. So literally, when the war started, we made sure liquidity and capital were our two areas of focus, and I think we managed to raise, like I said, $360 million in less than 2 years of different instruments, equity and credit lines, and to shore up both capital adequacy. As a systemic bank, we have to make sure we have additional buffers to sustain and to address regulatory requirements and so on, and go back to the whole question about trust and make sure our customers, you also you don't take that for granted, right? You have to make sure you prove to your customers and your shareholders that all your KPIs are solid and healthy. So the main focus now is to just continue our goal of reaching $100 million of capital raise. We've raised $60 million of equity. We're in discussions with some of our friends in the room. Francis, maybe you can help in that. I know they're helping us, EBRD, with bringing in co-investors. So we're looking at, they did a first round of 35 million with IFC, and Proparco came in with 10 million, and we're having discussions with others. But we need to raise that 40 million, right? That's one. We're also in discussions with Arab funds and GCC funds, so they are very much engaged. The other part is the strategic vision, the positive sort of where we were going before this apocalypse, right? We were going to book one of our best years ever in the history of the bank. We were going to reach almost $100 million of net profit, and for 23, and then the war started, and we had a strategy to kick off our global expansion. We're investing in technology and hiring and expanding. We applied for a license in Abu Dhabi Global Markets for a full-fledged offshore banking license. That's in process. We're hoping that hopefully this year, which by the way is our anniversary year, 65 years old, we are turning this year. So we hope this year will be the year of not only resilience, but really, let's say a relaunch of our not only recovery of Palestine, but the launch of our global banking mission to bank the 15 million people around the globe, right? There's 15 million Palestinians globally that we want to make sure we engage with, bank, transact with, and do everything with them that they would like to do, whether it's with us in the UAE out of our offshore banking, or whether it's remittances, or we're talking about structuring recovery funds and investment funds and so on and so forth, or just simple wealth management and diversifying. So that's, in a nutshell, our vision now is to just raise that capital and launch the bank's global next big move, which is we've captured the hearts and minds of the world, and the world is recognizing Palestine, recognizing that we're not going anywhere, and the world wants to do more with us, and we're not just attracting Palestinian hearts and minds that want to bank with us. It's what's happening is just people believe in Palestine, and we're a platform that is so well positioned to be able to safely, securely, in a well-regulated way provide an opportunity for anyone who wants to be part of this and make a real impact. And what we're witnessing today is not just a humanitarian crisis and the biggest one in human history, but it's potentially the biggest crisis of our collective humanity. And I think this is what has galvanized the hearts and minds of the world. And we are well positioned to embrace the world and rebuild our lives, rebuild our country, and hopefully move the needle in a better place for our collective humanity. Sarah, thank you so much.
No, thank you, Hashim. I think
thank you, everyone.
In this dreadful story of the crisis of Gaza, I think the bank is a real humbling, equally humbling and inspiring example of withstanding such an atrocious moment and still inspiring and supporting people to see the way forward and really providing a lifeline. Let me open to the audience. Please, there is a couple of roving mics. If you ask for the floor, if I give you the floor, please say who you are, if you are affiliated to anyone, and if you're brief, we can take more questions. Who wants to start? Silent. Everyone is stunned silent. Wait, yes.
Thank you very much, Hashim. Frederick Dahan from ODI Global. I would love if you could develop a little bit the vision of becoming global for serving Palestinians, but also friends of Palestine across the world. Because we talk a lot about the decline of aid and how the need to tap into remittances, perhaps to finance sustainable development is an important trend. So I would love to hear perhaps a bit more detail on your vision in this respect.
Sure. So
let me take 3 or 4, otherwise we won't get all of them.
Amanda Rowlett on the board of ODI Global. That was really inspiring to hear, as everyone has said. I'd like to hear a little bit more about where you make your profits, particularly in this very difficult time, and how much goes to people in Palestine, how much is remittances, and where your repayment rates have been struggling, to get a bit of a sense of the composition of your financial model.
Thank you. And Hans-Peter.
Yes, Hans-Peter Lank is also ODI Global. I'm sorry that you're getting a barrage of ODI questions.
The next round will go non-ODI.
But sort of having worked at both EBRD and IFC in my professional life, there are other countries that went through very difficult situations where the banking sectors did not hold up. Thinking of Bosnia, thinking of Nicaragua, thinking of Iraq. What is it that made you as resilient as you were? Is it management? Is it that you had political support for what you did and others didn't? What's your magic sauce?
Okay, can I have an attempt at these
please.
before
If
we
you're
move
brief,
on?
we can
I'll
get
try.
another
I'll try
round.
and be brief. So the special sauce is we this is Palestine. This is our people. We're a mirror of our customers, right? And the values we uphold, they uphold, and that's what's special about Palestine. I think, despite the horrific situation we've been in for decades, the commitment of small businesses to just persevere and be resilient. So the resilience, hopefully that message got out there, that we represent the resilience of our people, of our community, of our customers, and the way they structure their businesses and their cash flows and their capital and the way they risk profile their respective businesses and manage risk. NPL ratios in Palestine are relatively one of the lowest compared to any other country in the region. So it's, your question is spot on. What's the secret sauce? It's the fact that the underlying companies and businesses and farmers and people have been in this environment for decades and decades and decades, and have had to figure out plan A, B, C, D, recalibrate the way they live and work and balance their lives around that on a daily basis, on just whether they're able to access their farm to water their crops, or whether they're going to make it to school and their kids today or not. So the amount of determination to just overcome restrictions is just, it's a case study. And we were talking about case study. There has to be a case study on this. So we urge you, ODI Global, to have, a Cambridge and Oxford, one of these, big names, to do a case study on Palestine. It's really a unique case study, and it's not Bank of Palestine. Bank of Palestine is one story of many stories, and my colleagues in the room all have, they were established a few years after, but they're all applying the same principles, and they're all respectively doing great work. The question about the global diaspora strategy, it's a very big opportunity. It's and we're keeping it simple. The deposits, a bit of wealth management, treasury business, and remittances, and eventually maybe some credit, facilities and corporate finance and so on. But the model at the beginning is going to be simple, and the beauty of the model is its simplicity, and just managing that liquidity, and providing a safe, trustworthy platform to bank with, transact with, get remittances to the right places through proper AML, CTF, KYC, all of that stuff, and also, most of the humanitarian organizations bank with us. We're their service provider, right? So many of them, if you want to remit money to for the different programs, whether it's UNICEF or whether it's World Food Program, you can do it through us digitally. We also have wallet companies, digital payment companies that have, during the war, accelerated onboarding customers at a rate we've never witnessed before. I mean, so out of this tragedy, there's been a massive uptake in onboarding unbanked people from the unbanked, because 50%, I think, of the population is still unbanked. So there's a huge potential for financial inclusion, and that's one of the PMA's strategic goals, to continue this mission of financial inclusion. So that hopefully covers you. And the point of how are we so efficient and profitable despite the risks? Again, very low NPLs. We are very good at running our business and credit. We know how to study credit and especially SME lending. A lot of banks around the world have struggled with SME lending, but SME is the core of what we do. And to be honest, a lot of these loan guarantee mechanisms do encourage banks to lend more to SMEs, but in a controlled way, and to also get, beef up our risk profiling and risk credit risk monitoring and collections and all of that whole process, right? So that's one. Diversification. I mean, we're a universal bank. We're not a corporate bank. We're not an investment bank. We're just a very diversified bank. Gaza only represents 20% of our balance sheet, so it's a West Bank, Gaza, East Jerusalem, and of course now with the global expansion, the global business opportunity is going to contribute a healthy part of our future growth. So that's. But if we did a study on the cost, the interest rates in Palestine compared to the region and the world, we have one of the lowest rates. It's not like we're charging. You'd probably assume we're probably charging 20% or 30% on an SME loan. I think our average pricing is around 7%. Yeah, so it's corporate is like 5.5%. So, we run a very efficient business.
Great. There are a few more hands I see over there.
Hi. Thanks very much for a great discussion. I'm Jake Cusack at Cross Boundary. I know my colleague Ryan has worked closely with you on the Safe Palestine initiative. I guess my question is looking forward, to reconstruction in Gaza, recovery in the West Bank, the massive capital needs that will be associated with that. How are you thinking about meeting those capital needs? What's the mixture of DFI capital from the Gulf, diaspora, potential issuing of reconstruction bonds or things like that? How are you looking towards that day?
Thanks.
Let me see if there is anyone else here, because then we'll have to wrap up. It's a very quiet audience. No? Okay. Oh, yes, over there.
Hi, sorry, Hossein Kamal from Oxfam. I just wanted to ask what kind of mitigations you're putting on some of these SMEs and how you're supporting local communities to keep resilient, especially if they have loans, and what are those mechanisms in place?
Okay. So I'm glad you raised cross-boundary, and you're one of our dear partners, and we've the whole space of supporting. So yeah, we've been banking the real economy, SMEs, micro businesses. We're a values-based bank, community bank, etc., ESG. But one of the things we're very passionate about and have been for a long time is the knowledge economy, entrepreneurial, the fact that Palestinians are renowned globally for their entrepreneurial skills and successes around the globe and in Palestine, and to scale up the entrepreneurial ecosystem through establishing incubators, accelerators, and VC funds. So we've been championing the whole ecosystem for over 15 years. We started with hackathon competitions and doing initiatives that would catalyze that kind of activity at the youth level and universities and so on. But then we saw we need to go more serious, and that's when we actually had a stab at really establishing the first VC funds that are well structured and well designed. We did 2 funds, and one of the funds, I'm glad you raised this question, was closed during the war. To imagine like the idea that in Palestine there is a VC ecosystem, and there's a VC fund for tech startups, and there was a fund that got raised during the war and closed, $25 million, and the likes of EBRD, IFC, and others invested in this fund as well. Not just Bank of Palestine is the anchor champion investor, but this has been close to our hearts, and it because it also highlights the the future, the prospects, the determination, the resilience of all spectrum of our people, including the super bright, smart tech entrepreneurs that are doing phenomenal things. So this has triggered massive amount of employment activity, also has resulted in regional investment flows and launching of Palestinian startups to the globe from, starting in Palestine, but then have gone global or regional out of hubs, whether it's in the UAE or other places. So we did, during the war, we did some interesting, impactful initiatives like safe notes, and we did. We had a lot of support from other institutions to help us provide, technical assistance and mentorship to startups during the crisis. Some grant assistance as well, because grant money in this environment is very much needed. And those messages to those entrepreneurs, a lot of these businesses were doing also a lot of work for global companies. There were freelancers in Gaza and in the West Bank doing work for some of the big tech firms around the globe, and so these initiatives helped sustain those jobs and keep those jobs going. I mean, there was one initiative out of Gaza in the midst of war. A group of techies got together in a tent and got some Wi-Fi through some solar panels they put together, and they were just getting on with the jobs that they were doing, outsourcing to companies in Canada or the US or I don't know where. And so when we found out about these stories, we said, look, we need to help them, in a more organized, structured way. And so it's these grassroots things. And now this group is is doing pretty amazing stuff. Hundreds of people working in a more structured way, organized, and generating millions of dollars of income to Gaza, right, during the war. So it's very impactful. So that was that question. You asked a question about SME lending and risk mitigation. Again, part of it is long record in knowing how you do SME structure SME credit on the origination side, and it a lot of it does need some hybrid work, but also some of the risk loan guarantee funds that we access help us extend those loans as well. And yeah, I mean, sometimes regulatory relief on moratoriums and flexibility on repayments, and during the crisis times, it happened in COVID, and the PMA came with another round during this war. So it's important that regulators and banks work in these crises together with international donors and stakeholders.
Hashim, thank you so much for taking us through the incredible journey of the Bank of Palestine. I hope that we can play a small role in helping amplifying further what you've done so far, what you continue to do, and getting even more support for.
We need more support.
That is clear.
And in London, we need the support of, especially the bilateral support of institutions like BII, which is we're in discussions with, and we want them to include Palestine on their radar and on their mandate, and as many other bilateral DFIs have done so. So we need your help to convince the FCDO and your respective members of parliament.
They're listening, don't worry.
Are they? Okay, I hope they are. Because everyone has to be part of this. You cannot, you have to be on the right side of this, of history here. And this is a time where resilience really needs of Palestine, and it needs everyone's support. And Sarah, you know, what you and your team have done today, and you know, and thank you also EBRD for it's timed around your conference, which has been very useful for us. I mean, we used and somewhat abused your conference to you know, to carry out a lot of, you know, meetings and very impactful, very useful for me and for my colleagues from Palestine who are all here. So thank you so much.
Not at all, and thank you really to EBRD. With that, Francis, you know, hand over to you for your final remarks, because this has been very much a partnership with EBRD.
Thanks.
We're equally committed to continuing to support the Bank of Palestine.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. And I don't think you can match Palestinian hospitality, but I'm glad you abused ours. And you're all welcome. As I've said to all of the clients over the last 3 days, you know, this is not EBRD, this is your home. So we are a few stops on the Jubilee line, but every bank that is in this room has a home in London, and it sits on Bank Street. Now, Hashim, you shared a powerful set of memories today, and I think part of the resilience that you are displaying comes from those memories. And resilience has been used a lot, unfortunately, in the past years. It's not, unfortunately, a theme just for Palestine, and not just for the present. The world that is coming is one of upheavals and might making right, I'm afraid. And that's what we thought we were aiming to avoid when we agreed the end of World War II. Yeah. So these lessons are much broader than a strip of land, 24% the size of Greater London, that has already received more ammunition than the whole of London, Hamburg, and Dresden together in the past year and a half. Now, BOP has a history of not giving up. I can see from this guy, he's never giving up. He's not just resilient, he's also relentless, and we like that. It also it has a history of being there for its clients through thick and thin. That's what I take from this session tonight. And there's been a lot of thin recently, but BOP has been there. And it's also a history of loyalty to your clients and to your partners. And I think, all in all, that's a powerful lesson in banking. You don't support your community. You mentioned community. You were asked about community. You don't support your community because you just land somewhere and decide that you're going to start trusting people. You support your community because you know them well. You know every single member of that community, that family, that company, and you have built yourself into the fabric of that society. And we see the good banks. You mentioned, Hans-Peter, some good and some bad histories of banking sectors. We saw the good banking sectors are the ones where actors act just like this. They don't just lend money, they understand deeply, intimately the business of their clients. And that's what we like to see as EBRD. So when you do this, you build resilience for yourself and you build resilience in others so that you make yourself and your clients stronger, so that when the storm comes, everybody can resist the storm together. We've had many conversations with Bank of Palestine that seem a bit arcane maybe to non-bankers, but about how much more capital was needed than the levels that the regulators were asking for, right? Not because we don't like what the regulator is asking for or because we don't think it's enough, but because we know that you don't build a ship so that the water is just above, just at where the flotation line, the flotation line needs to have some space to the side of the ship. Otherwise, when the storm comes, you're in trouble. So we were having all of these conversations, and we have, you know, when the time came to decide to invest, the decision was easiest, right? I think my team and I, we really are, we had decided just even before you asked. The difficulty was more in convincing a lot of stakeholders, our credit team, our shareholders, all our board of directors, to support it, to go through all of the political, all of the objections, but it's not really a country so well. But, you know, and what if this happens? Well, if this happens, then we will act, we will react, we will adapt, we will. So the team showed, I think, a resilience you would be proud of to have also on your team. We have been, I think, more than, you know, a parent, small 3% parent to BOP. We've been, in fact, brothers in arms in this process, and we're very proud of this. In Palestine, you play a role that is not abstract and it's very concrete. You ensure that salaries are paid. You ensure that small businesses stay afloat. You enable digital and green innovation. You don't lose sight of these important things, even in in those most difficult of times. And you preserve the possibility of recovery. You know, I remember when I was visiting in Ramallah, you took us to a small cheese manufacturer, right, producer. Good cheese, actually, as a Frenchman, I can say. And they export it all the way to the US. So each piece which makes it to the shelves of a small grocery store in the US is a victory against the daily oppression that the people of Palestine face. Because let's face it, no one wants to WhatsApp their uncle in Ramallah and share that there's a cheese shortage in Detroit. So please keep those shelves well stocked. Thank you. And then just to be clear, we're not in this for temporary support. Last year, we invested a small amount. It wasn't just for return, but also for resilience, because economic viability stands at the core of the future that you build for your institution and for Palestine. And it depends on institutions like BOP. So we've been a partner for quite a few years now, as a lending partner, as a trade partner, and now as an equity partner. We became a shareholder last year. But when we look forward, I'm certain that this partnership will pay off. May pay off financially, hopefully, but more importantly, it will pay off in terms of impact for Palestine, in a lively banking sector, in continued resilience and in continued strength. Last year's investment was the first equity investment of EBRD in POP, in Bank of Palestine. I am confident it will not be the last, as you asked. And you know, not you, but the bank is reaching the age of 65, which is when one normally retires.
We just got started.
But exactly, this particularly young institution is full of dreams, and as long as it has more dreams than achievement, it will remain young. And this other youngster, EBRD, which is about half the age of Bank of Palestine, will reach, I think, 35 this year, will keep standing shoulder to shoulder with you. So thank you very much for your example and for your wonderful lessons today.
Thank you very much. What a fitting ending to this incredible conversation. Huge thanks to you, Francis, to EBRD. Big thanks to you, Hashim.
Big
and
thanks
I hope
to you
we've
for
inspired
making it
more
happen.
people to continue to stand
you.
shoulder to shoulder with the Bank of Palestine. And with that, please join us next door to carry on the conversation informally. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.